Today I'm going to be making a Mandalorian helmet, and if you want to try this yourself, there's links to the patterns below. They're free. This is the way. Alright, all my pattern pieces have been cut out of 6mm EVA foam, and they're all straight cuts on the number 1, the number 5, and the number 6. However, on the 2, the 3, and the 4, they're marked with either outward or inward cuts. So inward, angle this way, outward, angle that way. And that's crucial if you want them to fit together. And to glue these together, I'm going to be using contact cement. The first thing I'm going to glue is going to be these V-cuts. I try to do as little V-cuts as possible and kind of retooled this. And the two that I have are in the back, and they're on the number 6 pieces. And how contact cement works is you brush some onto each surface, allow it to set for 15 minutes, and then once it's dry, you press the two sides together and they will bond. Next, I'm going to apply contact cement along the seams here and join the 2 to the 3 and the 4 to the 2 and the 3. Okay, now that those are done, I'm going to set them off to the side for now. And next, I'm going to apply contact cement along here and along my number 5 and glue these two together. And then I'm going to glue the 6 to the 5. Alright, next I'm going to apply contact cement and glue in the completed pieces. Now I'm going to glue the two halves together. Okay, those are the basic shell pieces, but before I do any heat forming, we need to do the vents in the rear. And the main vent pieces, they're just labeled vent, that is going to be, I'm also going to cut it out of the same 6mm EVA foam. And for the actual vent slat pieces, those are going to be 2mm on top of a 2mm base. Okay, for the vents you'll need 2 pieces, a left and a right, and then you'll contact cement them together in the center like that. And these are 6mm, and for the vent flaps and the vent base, those are going to be 2mm. Okay, next I have my vent base, which is 2mm, and I'm going to start gluing these flaps on from the bottom, also 2mm. Okay, 8 of those like that. And now I'm going to put contact cement around both sides and the top and glue this inside of here. Okay, now that it's all glued together, I'm going to go ahead and trace around it on a piece of 2mm foam. I don't have a pattern for this. You'll just trace around your final piece. And this is just going to be basically to reinforce it. I'm going to cut this out and contact cement it. Okay, now I'm going to glue this into the back of my completed helmet. The vent is all glued in. I don't know why I put registration marks on here, because I don't actually glue it straight. I leave the mask curved and I leave this part straight, if that makes sense, and just line it up to the edges here. And now that that's in, I need to start heat forming this. I'm going to start with the face, making sure this is nice and curved, which will help pull this around, curving this, all that stuff. I took a piece of scrap foam to just glue in here, just a little bit of glue, because I'm going to have to slip an X-Acto knife under it and cut it out later. And if there is any stuck to it, I'll have to sand that off too with the dremel. But I put it in there just to hold this where I wanted it. Finished out my heat forming, and that's the final shape from the bottom. Curves a lot right in here to keep the sides relatively straight, but still to have a bit of a curve. And yeah, I think that gives it a decent Mando shape, front, sides, and back. Now we're going to start gluing some of our other pieces onto here. Okay, we have another winter storm rolling in, so I'm going to be gluing some of these accent pieces in off camera. The first one is the main visor accent, and that one is 2mm EVA foam. And when I glue it on, I start with the corner and go around to the center and then down. And this does overlap over your seam a little bit, and there's a reason for that, and it's for whenever I sand it. But that's something to keep in mind, take note of whenever you're doing your contact cement. Okay, next is going to be the side accent. This is ultimately going to have to get sanded, which is what this white line is for. And I've already assembled this one, but I have the pieces here unassembled to show you. Number 1, which is 6mm EVA foam. Number 2, which I cut out of 5mm. You could use 6 or you could use 5 for both. We'll line up with the top and get glued on there. And then your number 3 piece is 2mm EVA foam, which goes over top of that. Your number 4 is another 2mm piece, which lines up at the bottom and goes in the center. And then right below that is your 5. This is 5mm, and it will go on there. You can contact cement it if you want, but I super glue this because it's faster. Well, at least I think so. So this next part I feel is kind of optional, but whenever you glue these on the side of the mask itself slopes a bit. So you can either glue this piece to it so that it curves with the mask, or you can try and fill the gap, which is what I'm doing. Now the gap at the top of this is about 5mm. So I measured from where the curve and the gap basically started, which was down here, and I put a little mark. And then I traced out a piece to fill that. What I'm going to have to do now, though, is sand this flush and gradually plane it out to its full thickness at the top. And I'm also going to sand these angled, and I'm going to put my dremel around here as well, just to even all the sides out. Alright, I super glued them on. It lines up parallel with the seam and just along the bottom, and I spaced it out about 1/4 of an inch, and then it just comes up to the corner of your visor accent like that. And the number 6 piece is these 3 tabs, 1 on the top, 2 on the sides. And now I'm going to sand my seams and finish rounding all this out, and sand and even and round all this out too, so it matches up with this. Alright, I sanded all the seams. You'll notice these are a little smoother. The one in the center is a little rougher. I didn't really put any heat to the center. I actually heated these where I sanded so I could smooth out the grain as much as possible on all the stuff that I sanded. And the most probably important part is just angling this accent piece off. And then I'm going to blend all this together later, of course. Now, the next accent, I don't actually have a pattern for. All it is a 5mm wide piece of 2mm EVA foam. You just run from one side over to the other on top of the visor accent. Next, I'm going to put on the top accent, but I'm going to have to sand and angle this down to about 2mm on the side here, and also on the front, kind of like what I did here. Alright, there it is, all sanded off and angled out. And then up here at the front, I ground this down a bit because this is going to overlap onto your front accent. Next, I'm going to start sealing the seams with some DAP Alex Plus. This is the clear. It's not the fast dry. This is an acrylic latex caulk with silicone. And I always empty mine from the tube into a Tupperware to keep it sealed and fresh. And I use that and some tap water. A little bit on my finger. And then I'll just start to spread that out over the seams. Clean the excess off my finger in some water. And then from there, get my finger wet and just smooth it out. I'll do this as much as needed. Like in the heating, I don't think I've ever had one project where I don't get a little bit of a gap somewhere. Yeah, like right there. You can see there is a gap. So, yeah. But I can just kind of work the silicone down in there over the first go, and the second one just cover over that. Okay, after I covered the seams as best I could, I sealed it up by brushing on some gloss Mod Podge. And now I'm going to go ahead and spray it up with some Rust-Oleum Gloss Black. It's been 48 hours since I painted this, and it's ready now for me to continue that process. I'm going to start layering silver chrome over this with my airbrush. Okay, while I'm waiting for that paint to dry, I went ahead and cut out my visor from the visor pattern that I made. And this is what I'm using. It's a Hobart face shield replacement. On their actual website that I'll have a link to, they call it a replacement grinding visor. They don't call it face shield replacement. But it's nice and dark and gives you the authentic look. I'm going to glue this in by putting a very small amount of contact cement around the edge of this after I peel off the protective plastic. And that will help hold it in the mask while I can hot glue it in. What I usually have to do is I end up having to hold the shield like this with one hand while I have the mask sitting in my lap, put it inside, line up the center as best I can, and then put the sides down and then press and line up the front end. I usually pull it around though and look at it from the front to make sure that it's even whenever I'm doing the bottom. I start with the top and then just work down. Alright, visor is in, and that's what it looks like once I got it into place. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I may end up brushing a clear coat over it later, but also may end up going back and doing the weathering. But I just want to leave it the way it is for now. Okay, that's going to pretty much wrap up the video. As always, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. And like I say, if you'd like, there's links to the patterns below. And I hope everyone out there is staying safe. And if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching, and have a great day.